The Idol Hero, Songstress. Chapter 11. How to Move Forward. Now, before we begin, I do want to apologize again for not uploading very often right now. Work has me beyond busy. Until probably the middle of next month, I'll probably only be able to do 1 or 2 episodes a week at most. But after that, I won't be working much, so I'll be able to upload a lot more, hopefully. But with that being said, let's go ahead and move into the episode.
So, now that the trials are over, how are you feeling, Midoriya-san?
A woman with sea blue hair asked the teen. Izuku was sitting on a couch inside of what appeared to be a small office. The furniture was made of dark mahogany, padded with lighter cream-colored fabrics. There was one small window on the wall to Izuku's right, and then on the opposite wall was the door to the office. The woman, Koyanagi Cho, was Izuku's therapist. She was a tall, slender woman who obviously took care of herself from what Izuku could see. She dressed professionally in a burgundy pantsuit with a gold V-neck blouse, and held a small brown leather portfolio she used to hold her notepad. She didn't often use it, but when she did, the teen knew it was something important.
Relieved,
he said after a moment of thought.
I had been dreading this ever since the day of my break. The day everything changed. I knew it would be difficult, but I just hoped I wouldn't break down like I did in court. How do you feel about that?
The woman inquired.
You know, I don't feel quite as embarrassed as I thought I would. I mean, I have spent my whole life trying and failing to prove that I am tough enough to take on anything without help. But if there's one constant in my life, it is that I've needed help. I didn't get it for a long time, and I kept trying to hide the scars. But all that did was make everyone even more worried and put everyone around me in danger when my quirk evolved,
the greenhead explained.
So, a part of me kind of accepted that what happened in court was necessary for my own health, you know? I mean, the past hasn't exactly been nice to me. True enough,
the blue-haired woman noted.
But your more recent past and present seems to be treating you better. In many ways, yes,
the teen agreed.
There are still problems, not only stemming from my past, but also from people entering my life who have had similar or worse problems than me. I've told you about Eri and Todoroki. Helping them, well, I can't not help them, if you know what I mean. But it's stressful, and it sometimes hurts me emotionally to see them in such pain. Does it ever overwhelm you? It has only threatened to once or twice, when I was being reminded of my bullies. Most other times, it comes as a welcome distraction from the questions that keep echoing in my head, especially given some peculiar things I've noticed going on with my body recently.
The last part of that sentence was spoken low, almost at a mutter, as if the boy was somewhat embarrassed to say it.
I'll circle back to the questions part in a moment,
the counselor started as she leaned forward slightly.
But you mentioned something going on with your body. Could you tell me what you mean? Well, given what my quirk does to my body, the doctors have given me a list of things to watch out for.
The apparent boy started while looking down to his hands.
They were meant to determine whether or not I'd mature physically as a male or female. You see, there can be dangers if my body decides to manifest female while not having the correct outward anatomy for such. It's all kind of weird. I imagine it would seem that way,
the therapist said delicately.
I would almost say it would seem like some kind of ticking time bomb inside of you, given our past discussions about your gender.
The boy's face turned a deep red, almost matching her suit as he nodded emphatically.
Yeah,
he replied. For the most part, he was comfortable enough with his therapist that he hardly stuttered anymore. But things like this still brought it back.
They're afraid that if the mutation doesn't change the... me down there, it could cause serious medical problems.
Cho put her pad down and leaned a little closer.
Midoriya-kun, remember what I told you when we first started? This is a safe place. I won't judge you. I won't say what you should be. What did I say about your gender? Only I can decide,
the teen responded with a sigh.
Right. So have you thought about it?
Izuku nodded resignedly and sighed.
It's kind of hard not to. With the trial and all my new friends. And Suo-chan and Ochako-chan. Ochako-chan?
The therapist asked.
Hi. Uraraka-san asked me to call her by her first name at the trial. It's taking some getting used to,
came the reply.
I imagine so, since you're so used to being formal with everyone,
the adult mused.
Anyway, what have your thoughts been and how have they affected them? Well, the more I think about it, the more I feel I can't really apply either the boy or the girl gender to me consistently. Neither seems to fit all the time, and that's not taking into account the transformation times. It's really confusing. Some days, I'm convinced I'm a boy, and I'm really upset at Katsuki and the people of Aldera for putting strange thoughts into my head. I mean, just because my quirk changes me into a girl doesn't mean the core personality is a girl,
the confused teen mentioned with a frown.
Other days, I catch myself thinking that's something Komori-chan or Momo-chan, or any of my female friends, is wearing is very cute. Not in the I'm attracted to them kind of way, but in the I wonder how it would look on me kind of way.
Cho nodded and leaned back for a moment while she played with a lock of her hair. Izuku had learned that she did this when she was trying to figure something out, or when she was trying to figure out how to say something.
You said this feeling, and the thoughts associated with it, goes on for days, right?
At Izuku's nod, she hummed to herself and asked,
And what of your physical changes? Are they especially strong when you have these feelings?
It was the song sexual's turn to sit back and think for a few moments.
Not especially. I mean, sometimes the thoughts occur when the physical symptoms intensify, but not always. Sometimes when the feelings are their strongest, I have some of my strongest male inclinations. So it would be fair to say that biology may be a factor overall, but not specifically? I think so.
Izuku reluctantly agrees.
Okay, since our time is nearly up for today, I want to give you some advice. Discuss both the physical feelings and the emotional/mental ones with your mother and other adults responsible for you. You may need to have additional tests done.
Izuku could see her logic in this, so he agreed.
Secondly, discuss with them the possibility of bringing your friends into the discussion about your gender, if and only if you feel comfortable doing so.
When the teen started to pale, she added,
You said Yayorozu-san was the vice president of the LGBTQ+ club at your school, right? At his nod, she added, She may be able to help you with the day-to-day challenges, especially considering all the close friendships you're making. And my third piece of advice, I'm not sure telling Su-chan or Ochako-chan my thoughts is a good idea. What if they don't want to be close to me anymore if I'm not entirely a boy? I can't guarantee they won't, but at the same time I can't guarantee they will. All I can say is that the sooner they learn the truth, the better. Waiting to tell them could cause problems for your relationship, Suzuku. If you need to, ease into it, but don't take too long. Lastly, I'm going to renew my advice to explore your feminine side. If you want, I can provide supportive documentation to your OBGYN. All you have to do is let me know. This time the teen didn't try to object. Rather, he looked thoughtful, so she continued. This is part of why I suggested bringing your friends into this. You would need support in your experimentation, and they can provide it. But remember this, everything must go at your own pace. All I ask is that if something changes, and you decide to do so before the next session, contact me via the emergency service if it is after hours, okay? The teenager did not look convinced, but he sighed anyway and said, I'll think about it. Seeing that was all she was going to get at the time, the counselor answered, Please do. And if you need to, you can always call for an appointment sooner than Friday, okay? 2 days later found Izuku sitting in front of his OBGYN. He knew boys didn't visit this kind of doctor, but his quirk made the need for this kind of doctor mandatory, due to his odd genetic makeup and what it did to his body. He had stopped by a lab the day after his first trial appearance for a fresh run of tests, and today he was here to get his physical and results from the lab work. So far, everything had gone as expected, though he thought he spent a little more time in the stirrups than normal. So he was glad to be sitting in an actual chair beside his mother as the doctor reviewed her notes. Before I begin, I need to ask how your psychological sessions are progressing, Midoriya-kun. Dr. Koyanagi is reticent to send me notes concerning your sessions, which, given the stringent guidelines the JPA holds members of a profession to, makes sense. The doctor said kindly. Well, Hagiwara-sensei, in our last session, she asked me to discuss some things with you. The teen started reticently. With a supportive look from his mother and his doctor, he took a deep breath and said, Emotionally and mentally, I guess, I find myself alternating between male and female thoughts and feelings, but never enough to conclusively say I'm one more than the other. This statement didn't garner any looks of surprise from his mother, though the woman did reach over and take her son's hand to give it a squeeze. The doctor simply nodded and jotted down a couple of notes while still silently urging her patient to continue, which he did. Physically, I've been noticing some odd sensations centered in 3 areas. My chest, he said, pointing to that area. My stomach, he says, indicating the lower stomach near but not quite at the bladder. And between my legs. The doctor nodded as the teen motions to each area, then pulled out another piece of paper and attached it to a clipboard to hand to him, along with a pen. Excuse me 1 second. Mark each area you feel these sensations and try to label what they feel like. Itching, inflammation, soreness, or something else. Izuku did as instructed before handing the paper back a few minutes later. So, itching and slight inflammation in the chest. Inko blinked a couple of times and gasped once in shock, but then quickly looked to her son questioningly. Soreness and pressure in the lower stomach. And here you have drawn in your male organs, but marked 2 separate areas. The doctor quickly compared her notes to the drawing and then nodded once in confirmation. Well, Midoriya-san, it appears that the original prognosis possessing both sets of sexual organs is proven correct. Not only that, but your body is beginning to accommodate for it. This does cause me some concern, since your blood work shows you are beginning to enter puberty for both sexes. At this point, I may have to start seeing you weekly to monitor your body's adaptation to the changes. Is it really that dangerous, Higawari? Excuse me. Is it really that dangerous, Hagiwara-sensei?
The teen's mother asked, her voice heavily laden with concern.
If the blood has nowhere to go, it can be very dangerous,
The doctor replied.
As it is, I will be handing you a complete form before you leave so your son can use the neuter facilities at his school. While Komin is one of the best school districts in the greater Tokyo area when it comes to LGBTQ+ support, it's only because they have made such accommodations routine. Teenagers are teenagers, even in more enlightened school districts. The changes in your son's body are soon going to be very obvious, if they aren't already. I would recommend you and he sit down and talk about bras, as he is likely going to start needing them. I see,
said the son, stuttered out.
What about, transgender teens talk about drugs to suspend puberty. That would normally be an option,
The doctor began gently.
and one we could definitely try if you so wish. But I feel you need to be informed about the specific problems that could manifest in your case. You see, in other transgender people, arresting puberty is generally safe, though it might affect future bone density and or fertility. But those two side effects are far from universal. However, in your case, we're dealing with not one, but two sets of reproductive organs, whose future fertility we can only guess at this point in time. This means we don't know if we need to give you a higher dose than usual to arrest both sets, if it would be safe to do so, and what that would mean for your body in the future. So, what you're saying is it would be a risk to start treatment? What if we removed one set of organs?
The boy asked.
Well, first we'd need to know which set you'd like us to remove.
The doctor replied gently.
My earlier question about your talk with your psychologist was related to that option.
The boy nodded slowly in acknowledgement.
We don't want to push you to give an answer you're not ready for, which is why I haven't taken puberty blockers off the table. But there's one other concern, given the nature of your quirk. We can't tell if my quirk wouldn't just grow it back again.
The boy filled in the blank as his head fell to look at the ground.
That's right. No other gender-bending quirk in the literature, and there are very few of them out there, does what this one does to your body. The closest one has a trigger that changes the body on a specific trigger, on a semi-permanent basis until the appropriate counter-trigger is applied. So there's no bleed over between forms. So there's no supporting documentation to generate a hypothesis for an outcome. I need to talk to my friends,
The boy finally said with another resigned sigh.
Koyanagi-sensei gave a suggestion that might help. I'm scared. Of what, honey?
The teen's mother asked gently.
What will others think?
The doctor looked confused, but Inko had a very good idea what her son meant.
I think, no matter how scary it might be, you should give them the chance to tell you what they think, sweetie. You know, that we will support you no matter what, right?
At the boy's nod, she continued.
I think they will be very upset if you try to decide their reactions for them. And we both know that Asui-chan would let you know in no uncertain terms just where you were in your thinking.
The boy nodded before looking up to the doctor.
Thank you, Sensei. For now, the letter would be fine. I'm training to get into a hero school, and I can't afford to take something that may alter my bone density, especially given what you told me about unknown dosages. The doctor nodded and gave her patient a smile. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're thinking this through carefully. Please see the receptionist to schedule an appointment. Tell her I will see you after hours if need be. The boy bowed once and then followed his mother out to make the appointment before heading home. Sanity's Sanctuary group chat. Pool. One sec, I'm trying to figure out who's who. Okay, Pool must be Mrs. Midoriya. Whip. Who's Whip? One sec, I'm gonna figure this out. Oh, that's Midnight. Okay, sorry guys. Pool. We're leaving the doctors. As we feared, things are getting more complicated. Whip. I take it all you got is more bad news. Cloth. ... Pool. Well, more like mixed news. We may have to cancel a training session or two. Mike. Oh no! What's happening? Cloth. Please quiet down, Hizashi. Though I must ask the same thing. Pool. Long story short, our baby is on a biological race to see if puberty or his quirk adaptation will finish first. Whip. Ouch. You mean... Pool. Yes, it's official. All his hormone levels are increasing rapidly. We discussed options. Cloth. I can't erase this away. Pool. I know you can't, Shota. We did talk other options, but the most viable option turned out to be personal exploration. Mike. Come again? Pool. Izuku is on the phone with his friends right now to organize a time for everyone to get together to try the girl side of things, at his gynecologist's request. Whip. Oof, poor baby. I bet that went over like a lead balloon. Pool. Not as a you should be a girl thing, but more a tool to help him figure out his own feelings kind of thing. I think he was too shook up to blow his top. I had to strongly suggest he remember to invite those girls that had been floating around him. Cloth. Telling something like that to someone you're questioning on is bound to be anxiety-provoking. Mike. Izuku doesn't deal with anxiety well. Pool. Yeah, tell me about it. Is it okay to say I'm a bit scared for my baby? I'm going to have to take him to the doctor weekly until we know how biology is going to go. Whip. It's perfectly fine, dear. Hugging arms. Whip. Just remember, we're here for you. Cloth. How about Hizashi or I stop and get something out of for dinner tonight? Namiri, you head home and help Inka with the kid. Mike. And let the pre-stage performer know whatever day he wants to get his friends together for that experimentation, just to let me know and we'll cancel training. Or better yet, call that training instead. He needs to be comfortable in his own skin if he's going to be the kind of hero he wants to be. Private message, Cloth to Whip. Cloth. Have you asked her to stay with us permanently yet? Whip. No, I just can't find the right time. Cloth. This is normally Hizashi's job, but do it soon. I suggest after the problem child goes to bed tonight.
If you want, we can make ourselves scarce.
Whip. Just be in the next room, okay?
Cloth. Will do. Sanity's Sanctuary group chat.
Pool. Okay, looks like the best time for them all is tonight. All Might is still out on a case, and his other friends are out for the rest of the week. Mike. Best done soonest. Besides, we were already calling tonight a wash because of his after-school appointments. Pool. Yeah, Yorozu-san has offered her house instead of the station. More private and, well, Izuku says she's loaded. Whip. I just think she wants to use that as an excuse to have her friends over. Pool. I think so too. Especially since she's already said that she'd be willing to put everyone who wants to stay there up for the night. Cloth.
For now, I don't think an overnight stay at a friend's house is a good idea. Mike.
Unfortunately, I have to second that. Whip. Inko dear, please let them know we appreciate the offer, but for Zuku's safety, no. And please see if we can be invited. Pool. Already ahead of you, though it may mean divulging living arrangements. Cloth.
Do it.
Mike. Do it. Whip. Do it. Those kids are trustworthy. Pool. Navigating the minefield. Coordinates sent.
An hour after the medical appointment ended, found Izuku and his mother pulling up to a large estate. That was the only way he could think of to describe the Yayorozu dwelling. There was more than one building there, but a large building almost looked like a cross between a Shogun-era palace and a modern mansion dominated the rest of the buildings. The yard was commensurately large and was well cared for. The entire property was encased by a stone wall at least twice as tall as the tallest person he knew, Ida, and the front gates were thick, sturdy wood with some kind of metal bands, hinges, and latches. The place looked intimidating, at least on the outside. Inside was meant to be elegant, which the Midoriyas discovered as they walked through the smaller pedestrian door set within the gate. It was evident that as much as the outside of the property was meant to portray solid defenses as a strong stance, the inside was meant to show the family was capable of gracious hospitality. This was proven even more so by a security guard showing up in a golf cart before they got more than 50 feet from the gate. Midoriya-san? At Inko and Izuku's nod, the man said, Yayorozu Dono has asked me to bring you to the main building. Are you expecting anyone else to join you?
Yes, the Midoriya matriarch answered as she bowed her head to the man. 3 pro heroes, provided they do not beat us here, should be arriving soon. They are Eraserhead, Present Mike, and Midnight.
They have already arrived, and were expected, the man said. So if you please. He gestured to the cart, and after a very brief discussion, Inko got up front and Izuku sat behind them. 10 minutes later, they were at the main house, and Momo was at the door to usher them in. To be honest, none of this helped settle Izuku's nerves. Izuku was incredibly nervous about the discussion that was coming up. He honestly wanted to put it off for a couple of days, in the case of 3 of his friends, in an attempt to keep the relationship he had with them longer. He didn't think Ida-san or Yayorozu-san would have a problem with what was happening, and he was pretty sure Komori-san would be supportive, but he wasn't as close with any of them as he was with the other 3. No, if he had to be honest with himself, he would have to admit that, more than just finding her cute, he had grown to feel really close to Susan. In many ways, she was his first real friend, and she was an anchor for him. Yes, she was almost painfully blunt most of the time, but he trusted her in a way that he hadn't been able to trust anyone in a long time. He knew where he stood with her, for she would never hide her feelings.
All in all, she was amazing, and he felt lucky someone like her would want to be as close to him as she had been up until now. Ochako-chan was a regular ray of sunshine. Her energetic demeanor and optimistic attitude always seemed to uplift him from even his darkest pits. She was a girl that always seemed to cheer him on. Her nickname for him was a perfect example of that. She had heard him mutter about Katsuki while they were waiting for Eri to get checked out. Tsu had gone in with her because she knew best how to handle small children scared of doctors, and Izuku had been playing the events of that day in his head. He remembered muttering something about refuting Katsuki's claim of his being a Deku, when Ochako-chan asked him what he was talking about. To this day, he didn't know why he told her even as much as he did, but he still remembered what she said.
What I saw out there today was not a Deku. You were not useless. You were the exact opposite of that. You were a Dekido.
He still felt his heart flutter when she called him that. Todoroki. The boy was new to the group of close friends, but ever since he found out what kind of person Endeavor truly was, the boy's place in that group was just about cemented. Yes, the boy was socially stunted in many ways, and had crazy theories about love children that Izuku thought for sure was some kind of defense mechanism. But the boy was also a strong voice of reason in the group. Tsu was the backbone and guide, Ochako was the energy and driving force, and Todoroki was the inquisitive, passionate defender. The boy had a lot of rage buried inside him, more than what he could be healthy, but he channeled that into a sharp mind and a solid core, from which those he trusted could branch out. He was someone anyone could depend on, provided you earned his trust. Sometimes Izuku was amazed by how quickly he had gathered friends once he got away from Aldera. He went from the useless, powerless nobody, shunned by the rest of the school, to someone at the center of an amazing circle of teens that would grow up to be astounding heroes. But that was the problem. Something so quickly built could just as easily be taken away, and he would have to face all of these people now and explain to them that he was not who they thought he was. No, he was about to lose some of the best friendships he would ever have.
Hello? Dekido?
A voice broke into his thoughts. He looked up to find the gravity girl's face inches away from his own, with her hand waving between them.
You okay?
You didn't even notice Eri-chan hug you. Just then he felt something that was holding onto him squeeze his stomach tighter and say,
Izuku, Nisan. Oh, she was just about to cry.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, she was just about to cry. Sorry, he said as he bent down to hug the girl, first apologizing to her.
I just had a lot on my mind, and I got kind of lost in my thoughts. Are you going to be okay, Nisan?
The little girl asked as she continued to hug him tightly. Sometimes he was amazed at her ability to read a room, or more to the point, his moods. He tried at first to maintain his upbeat tone around her, but she was always able to tell when something bothered him.
I hope so, Eri,
he whispered into her ear. He straightened up, holding onto her as he did and moving an arm to support her as he looked around the room. Everyone was holding looks of concern on their faces, even the adults. He inwardly sighed, which of course was not missed by the little girl he was holding.
Just talk to them,
said Girl Whisper, even though she had no idea what was going on. He nodded to her and moved to sit in an empty chair facing them all.
Thank you all for coming on such short notice,
he began, drawing some support from the girl. How he deserved a sister like this he'd never know.
As you could probably tell from my text, there have been some developments that have come to light as a result of the appointment I had today. And It's time to tell you.
His voice hitched, and the girl in his arms just squeezed him tighter as she understood he was upset, even if she didn't know why.
Just take a deep breath.
Komori said it softly as she looked at her friend with concern. She could tell two people were just seconds away from initiating a hug pile, while a third was looking on with increasing confusion.
Nothing you can say is going to change the fact we're here for you. That this might,
he said almost plaintively as he squeezed his eyes shut. Damn it, he was not going to cry. Not until after everything fell to pieces, at least.
Tell us, Kettle.
The frog girl spoke up, a slight frown forming on her face as she sat beside a confused Ochako.
One of the things I see as a psychologist for is gender issues,
he said resignedly.
I told you before, people at my school used to insist I was a girl because of my quirk. But what I didn't say is that I never could say with certainty that I was a boy either. Even in my male form.
The song sexual complied. Why did this have to be so hard?
Mm-hmm.
The heiress in the room said supportively. She and her longtime friend Ida exchanged looks, nodding. They had heard of the intersex part, but neither of them were sure if others had, so they weren't going to say anything at this time.
Also, my quirk has mutated my body, making me I have both boy and girl parts.
He finally says, trying to break this down so his sister could understand it, even though the first part likely confused her to no end.
I'm confused,
said sister softly.
How can someone have both boy and girl parts? It's rare, Eri-chan.
Inko spoke up to give her son a break.
Most of the time, something happens before they're born. But in your brother's case, his quirk has changed him, at least partway. We can explain it later, darling.
Midnight spoke up as she walked over to rest her hand upon the girl's head.
I know it's confusing. It's confusing to many grown-ups, too.
Izuku took a deep breath and nodded, then pulled his head away from the girls enough to smile at her.
Just remember we love you. No matter what. Okay?
The girl grinned at him as she snuggled in again.
So, you're intersex, Deku?
Ochako asked, tilting her head to the side.
Why have they waited so long to correct it? Because of my quirk.
The confessor replied even as he looked at her.
At least, that is one reason.
You also mentioned you have gender issues.
Todoroki finally spoke up. And from the way you explained it, it sounds like you're not sure even now if you're a boy or girl, right? The boy took a deep breath and let it out slowly.
Up until recently, I insisted I was a boy. But looking back, I can't see how much of that was me speaking. How much of was me not knowing what being a boy or girl full-time is. Or how much is denial against what the bullies said. Everything is moving so fast. And then there was what we found out today at the doctor's appointment.
He haltingly went on from there to explain what they discovered about his body and the various options discussed.
So let me see if I got this straight, kiddo.
Sue said in a flat voice, though Izuku could detect a bit of anger in there.
We have discussed before about what the bullies at Aldera did to you, including labeling you as a girl. Nothing said at that trial was really new, or at least couldn't be assumed based upon what we already knew. But you purposefully left out the intersex part of your problems and didn't tell us about your gender questioning status. Now that everything is coming to a head, you are only now telling us this?
Many of the adults began to frown at Sue's words, but before anyone could say anything, Ochaku continued.
I may not have known you as long as Su-chan, and we have not had as many chances to interact, but I remember telling you that if you had any problems, you could come to me. Don't get me wrong, I am glad you're talking to us now, but I'm not liking the way it's coming out.
Todoroki tilted his head to the side and asked, Is this supposed to make any difference in how I see you? Or how I view our friendship?
I think it's supposed to, kiddo.
The frog girl bit off angrily. The anger was now coming into her voice. That was not a good sign. He's never seen her this angry before.
That's what you're thinking, isn't it, Midori-kun?
The intersex teen winces hard at both the question and the use of his full name by his first friend. He started only to lose what he's saying completely.
Hey! Don't blame Nissan! It's not his fault his Quirk does something to him.
The little girl in his lap shouted, defending her brother. She wouldn't show her anger or fear for herself, but for someone else she most definitely would.
Oh, Harry.
Ochako said sadly.
We're not blaming him for what his Quirk is doing. We're not even mad at him for not knowing if he is a boy or girl. Then why are you mad? Because your brother thinks so little about our feelings for him that he thinks something like this is going to change how we feel. I'm mad that he thinks I'm going to hate him for being different. He has a mutation just like I do, and just like you do. Even if his indecision is not all Quirk-driven, I'm willing to bet a large part of it is, kiddo.
The frog girl explains frankly.
To me, thinking I'm going to hate him for that is saying I'm just like those people that hate me for being part frog.
No! The distraught teen yells out, shocked that she'd draw that connection. That's not it at all!
Then what is it, Deku? Why are you convinced we'd hate you because of your mutation? From the sounds of things, the doctors are sure that your Quirk is going to make you this way no matter what they do.
Ochako said, obviously agreeing with her froggy friend. He started, only to stop, drop his head and blush.
People get weird when sex and gender are involved.
An adult sigh echoed across the room, startling everyone because of the deepness of the voice. Problem child. In this case, it is best to admit you made a mistake, apologize and ask forgiveness. Aizawa spoke up. They know enough of your history that they should take it into account. It's not as if you've had the best of examples of friendship before, after all. The two girls blinked, then looked at each other and blinked again.
Kiddo.
Sue croaked as she realized the pro-hero was telling the truth there. Her stiff posture shrunk slightly as she turned back to her friend inside.
Sorry, kiddo. I'm sorry, Deku.
I'm sorry, guys. All three said at once. They looked between each other and blinked, then chuckled lightly.
Really, I'm sorry.
You gave me no indication you'd stop being my friend or for something I couldn't control, the intersex teen said finally, calming down enough for his stuttering to recede. I don't know which girl is speaking here. Oh no. I think this is Sue.
I should have taken your past into account, Izuku-kyo. You probably have had at least a couple of times where you were told someone was interested in you only for them to vehemently deny it, haven't you?
The girl asked. The troubled teen nodded and answered. And a couple of times where they said that in private to turn around and deny it in public. I'm not sure which is worse. Ochako spoke up as the other teens and adults watched on. What some people will do to get their laughs sickens me.
Anyway,
Komori spoke up now that the argument had finally started to settle. What did the doctor and the psychologist recommend? That question caused the brunette to blush deeply again. He looked like a strawberry again. Oh. Excuse me.
he looks like a strawberry again.
The girl in his lap exclaimed, happy again now that people weren't mad anymore. They recommend I try dressing and being a girl for a short while to see how it fits me, he said. Kind of like a real-life test used for transgender people, Ida commented thoughtfully. Is that the way they meant it? Midoriya said. Yes and no, the song user replied. The doctor says since I don't know what I want, it would help. And if you're not fighting it anymore, I imagine you're getting frustrated yourself, Momo added on. His closest friends looked at him curiously as if trying to decide if that would be accurate or not. Yeah, he said. He replied with a blush. They're not saying I should be a girl. They're trying to help me reach an informed decision. I don't know about anyone else, Ochako said finally. But I can appreciate the difference. I take it they left this for you to decide, right? At Izuku's nod, she asked. What made you decide to go along with it? And how far are you wanting to take it? Take your time, pre-stage performer, the voice hero encouraged softly. You're among friends and family here. The intersex youth took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down enough to not stutter as he said. The OBGYN said they were not sure if removing one of the other set of organs would be permanent. Or at least, she sounded pretty sure the female organs would start growing back. She didn't say much about the male organs, and I already told you about the biological race. The rest of the room, besides Eri, who still couldn't understand, nodded solemnly. A large part of me still screams, I'm a boy, but there's another part of me screaming, are you really? I think I'm a girl. As I said, I can't tell where the first is coming from, and I owe it to myself and my friends, and my family to figure this out, hopefully before UA. If there needs to be a major surgery, it would be best if it happens before UA. And that's even if my body doesn't fight it, or settle it. In the end, I'm scared. Now tears started to roll down his cheeks, and Eri hugs her brother tightly. At this point, I don't even know what I am anymore. You are Izuku Midoriya, Todoroki spoke up, walking forward to look at his friend. You are a person with an enormous heart who puts others' needs before their own, even if logic may dictate you shouldn't. You are my friend, and male, female, or whatever, that will not change. He looked kind of awkward while he said this and turned to look towards Sue imploringly.
What he said, kiddo.
The frog girl responded with an encouraging nod toward the boy. She mentally made another reminder for herself to find a way to get him away from his father on a more permanent basis.
You are the person I found in an alleyway, frustrated and alone, needing help. And the moment you got it, you turned that help outward to everyone else, proving yourself to be a hero many times over, long before you could even get into UA. I agree,
Ochako said, getting up and walking over to the boy.
You are the person who gave calm reassurance to me and a little girl while we ran from the scariest person I have ever heard of. You are a person with such a big heart that anyone who meets you knows their life will be forever changed because you're in it. You are one of my closest friends. You are my future hero and idol partner.
Komori spoke next, a broad smile on her face.
Despite your shyness and reticence to trust others, you not only didn't laugh at my idea to become an idol hero, but you encouraged me. You are one of the few people I can geek out with about idols, heroes, and idol heroes. You don't think me weird because I like mushrooms too much. You even laugh at my shroom puns. But do you have any idea how awesome that is?
One sec, y'all.
You're one of the kindest, most honest people I know.
Momo added with a soft smile on her face.
If Tina-kun or I ever need a hand, you're there in an instant, no questions asked. You haven't even mentioned how intimidated you were by coming here today, despite the way the grounds here were set up. You also are a person that has given me so many interesting ideas about my quirk that I have had to redesign my idea for a hero costume. And you've never once asked me to make anything for you. Do you have any idea how rare that is?
If there was such a position, you would probably be the chief defender of the class, Ida said as he chopped the air with his hand. You stood in front of certain danger for the class, all on your own, and helped keep everyone safe, proving yourself as a leader. You're also very smart and observant, especially when it comes to quirks and mysteries. There's a reason the entire dedicated deduction class knows that when you speak, they need to listen. It would seem to me, Izuku, Hisashi spoke up, like you have some very good friends who have a very good idea of who you are. I can also say that you are an exemplary student, and you will be a great hero one day, even better than you are now. Midnight stepped forward along with Inko and put her hand on one shoulder. Inko rested her hand on his other shoulder, as they both looked down at him with warm smiles. The two women looked at each other for a moment before Inko nodded at the hero, allowing her to go first.
I know your mother would agree, and I can speak for my husband as well as myself when I say you are our precious child. Your life has not been perfect, and you stumbled and fell, but the way you've come so far in picking yourself up off the ground and worked to be the best person you can be astounds us. Don't ever forget that.
Inko took in a deep breath and gave Namiri a loving smile of affirmation before turning her attention to her son.
I couldn't have asked for a better group of people to adopt you, sweetie. I am so happy it was Midnight who showed up at our door to help you that day. I feel so lucky they want us to be part of their family. Almost as lucky as I feel to have given birth to you.
No one saw the looks of pride on the faces of Shota and Hisashi as everyone was focused on the questioning teen. But 3 people in that room were inwardly cheering in happiness.
You are my baby. Even when you're 20 years old and saving the world, while bringing about hope to the world, you will still be my baby. Do you notice Did you notice something, though? Not a single person in here has mentioned if you were a boy or a girl.
The teen grinned at while he winded the past few minutes in his head, discovering that his mom was right. They all said it a person, or some other manner of addressing him that did not convey gender. This floored him even as he looked around the room at each person, including his sister in his lap, who simply nodded at him with a watery smile.
It doesn't matter, Izuku, what you were born as. It doesn't matter what your quirk is developing you into. It doesn't even matter what others say you should be,
Inko continued.
The only thing that matters is what you want to be. Who you want to be. If that takes you dressing like a girl to figure it out, then I'm behind you every step of the way. I will still love you, as will each and every person here, in their own way.
Izuku couldn't help but to smile even as fresh tears rolled down his face.
Thanks, Mom,
he said softly. His mother smiled lovingly at him, even as she bent to pick Eri up.
Your brother is going to be busy for a bit. Why don't you sit with me?
The little girl nodded even as she was carried away, so that the other teens could get to her.
Okay.
Mama said as she made her way to the front of the group.
We need to get measurements so we can decide if we have things to fit you or if we need to go shopping. You will likely need to go shopping regardless, because you will find you will need a complete new wardrobe. But before we begin, I have 2 questions. First, will you be going to school as a girl?
Izuku looked thoughtful for a moment as if considering it.
Given that our class already knows I can appear as a girl, it shouldn't be too embarrassing, so yes. Okay, I'm gonna make you a uniform set to wear to school tomorrow so you can get with this sensei to get extras. Noticing that Izuku was about to say something, she giggled. No, I'm not accusing you of asking me to do that. I'm offering as a friend. Big difference, so get over it.
The rest of the teens laughed at this, none harder than Ida, who knew she could get that way sometimes.
Next question, in 2 parts. Will you go by a different name as a girl? And if so, what? Yeah. At least for now,
the soon-to-be girl answered.
You may.
Alright. So, quick note that the author made here, and I didn't even know this, and I'm learning Japanese, so cool, learned a new word today. Yume means dream or vision, which, that's such a good choice. That is a deep choice for a name. Holy cow. Okay. How much time have we spent on this episode already? Do I have enough in me to do another one? Just a second, y'all. I'm going to run to the bathroom real quick, and then I'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Alright. Just a second. Having a coughing fit, but then we'll get into it. Alright, sorry about that, y'all. Chapter 12. Come Together. Midoriya Inko entered the living room after tucking in her adorable child. The meeting after the hospital visit had turned into a long, lively affair that left her baby blushing quite a few times. First, Yume, and Inko simply adored that name, was embarrassed to strip down to her underwear in front of everyone. After some good-natured teasing and promises of good behavior, her little girl gave in with the one condition: someone find something to cover her chest. Before anyone could say anything, that Yayorozu girl made a tube top for her, then walked her over to the girls' changing room.
For tonight, if we need anything, I will produce it. I ate a big lunch, and we did not plan on meeting for this, so I don't mind.
The rich girl announced, putting her foot down to end any arguments. From there, it turned into an animated and rather fun session of getting her daughter measured in just about every way possible. It was clear that after she lost her nervousness, her gender-questioning child was having more fun in that session than the mother had witnessed her child have since before she was 4 years old. She quickly pushed away the memories associated with that thought and focused on the memory of her child learning how to dress like a girl. School uniforms were one thing, but casual wear and nighttime clothing were a complete unknown to her baby. When they discovered she was already an A-cup, that caused the girls to explain several things about bras that, while it embarrassed the girls, had the boys in the room blushing. Yes, even the generally stoic Todoroki child blushed. She was pulled from her thoughts by a female voice asking,
Is Yume-chan asleep?
The green-haired mother looked over toward her friend and gave her a wide smile, nodding once while saying,
She was almost out as soon as her head hit the pillow, poor thing. Today was a roller coaster and it left her be.
The purple-haired woman walked over to a couch to sit and patted the cushion beside her in an invitation as she continued the conversation.
So, how are you holding up, Binko dear?
The woman said with a peculiar mixture of concern and teasing.
Better now that the trials are over, or at least those that involve Yume.
The mother answered with a sigh.
Although, it seems that one problem is solved just in time for another to crop up. I swear, sometimes I think my baby has been cursed. I can see what you mean. We just finished most of his legal battles, only to have medical ones pop up.
The hero observed.
Still, it could be worse. These medical issues could have popped up before Hizuku was needed for testimony.
A shiver ran down the green-haired woman's spine as the thought of that scenario was mentioned.
Please no. I don't think my heart could have taken that. And I know that it would have troubled Yume to no end if she had to postpone her explorations for the trial. The latest development has been tough enough for her as it is. She did seem to be somewhat reserved at first, though she got more into it. Though she got into it more and more as her friends grew excited for her. I think a part of it is that she was afraid of this creating a distance between her and Suyu-chan or Ochako-chan.
The mother sighed as she instinctively leaned into the woman.
I also think she is having problems defining a relationship with both of them, and to a lesser extent with Todoroki-kun. Thank goodness his school friends are all part of his school's LGBTQ plus club. That at least gave him some kind of anchor. So, you don't think he worried about what you would think?
Namiri asked as she draped an arm around the other woman. She gently started rubbing her shoulder, eliciting a soft sigh from her.
I hope not.
The mother guessed.
I mean, I was there and made it clear during the appointment that whatever she decides I would support. I hope she understands that goes for relationships as well. If she chooses one, fine. If she chooses more than one, also fine. So, you have no problems with polyamory then?
The hero teacher tried to keep the hope out of her voice, even if she wasn't exactly successful. She didn't think the other woman did, but Inka was the kind of person that wouldn't say anything that would offend someone, not unless her family was threatened at any way.
Not at all,
Was the answer given, quickly and firmly.
It just never came up in my prior marriage. Hisashi was... well, he was the possessive type, amongst other things. The less said about that man, the better, right?
The purple-haired woman said with a seductive smile and a wink. At the mother's blush, she chuckled a little and took the offered chance.
Well, I'm glad you don't have any issues with polyamory, given the current setup of this house.
After gulping once to settle her nerves, she added,
Because I wanted to talk to you about it.
The woman leaning against her turned her head and blinked owlishly at the hero with a look of concern on her face.
Why? Are we causing problems in your marriage?
Shaking her head from side to side quickly, the teacher answered,
No, not at all.
Her friend gave a sigh of relief, and the teacher continued.
Know what
She gulped again and sighed.
This stuff doesn't get any easier as you grow older.
She part mumbled.
Look, Inko dear. We all, Hisashi, Shota, and myself, have loved having you here with us. I would say that you and Izuku, now Yume, have quickly become a part of our lives that we have cherished quite deeply.
The other woman nodded once, though her eyes narrowed a little in confusion.
Okay. I mean it.
The somnambulist user asserted.
We have all grown rather attached to you and your child. I hope this doesn't offend you, but I kind of see her as my daughter too.
The mother shook her head to indicate she wasn't offended, which let Namiri breathe a sigh of relief before continuing.
I know Hisashi and Shota have fatherly feelings towards her, even if Mr. Grumpy Pants doesn't show it often. Oh no, he shows it.
Inko observed.
He just shows it through his protectiveness for Yume. Just like during the small fight this afternoon. He interrupted just before I was going to, and his delivery of that advice was very dad-like. Don't let him hear you say that. Or better yet, do. He could stand to be teased a little by you.
The surrogate mother chuckled.
But my point is, we as a group like you and your child. You should know that because, well... Look, Inko. The familial bonding aside, I've been experiencing some intense feelings towards you.
The song user's mother moved to sit up a little straighter so she could look into Midnight's sky blue eyes more easily.
What kind of feelings? You, as an individual, have become very important to me.
The hero started.
So much so, in fact, that I can't imagine my life without you in it. To me, you're more than a friend, or even a best friend. Your well-being is on par with my husband's well-being, as far as importance goes. Your happiness means equally as much to me. It's hard to describe.
The nurse reached up with her hand to grasp the hand of the arm draped over her shoulder, giving it a gentle squeeze. The woman smiled in response and asked,
Are you trying to say you love me? Not romantically, but there is a great deal of affection there, yes.
The confessing woman responded.
Are you aware of the different kinds of love?
After receiving an affirming nod from the mother, she said,
In a way, it's kind of like a mix between philia and pragma. I know pragma normally takes a long time to develop, but the level of commitment there is what I feel.
Inko took a few moments to consider her own feelings. After that couple of moments, she decided to discuss this aloud, since the prolonged silence could be misconstrued.
Ever since I got my divorce from Hisashi, I've been burned out on romance. In many ways, I considered myself a romantic. I think you can tell I like hugs, cuddling, and hand-holding, primarily because that's how I showed my familiar love to Suzuki. And yes, I have noticed you and I fell into that rather quickly. But if there was one thing I never wanted, it was romance. Affection, yes. Romance, no.
Namuri nodded slowly as a way to emphasize her response.
I thought that was the case, just from the way you talked about your ex-husband. I also watched how you reacted to the intimacy and romance in my marriage to the guys, and there was no sense of longing during the romantic parts. If anything, you looked slightly uncomfortable. Romance between others doesn't bother me,
Inko replied as she squeezed the other woman's hand again and smiled.
But you were right in that there's no yearning for that when I watch you three. I will admit I was a little jealous at first over the easy affection between you three, but you have been showing me a lot of that recently, so that has fallen away. As long as you can understand that, I can say that I love you too.
Namiri's heart felt a lot lighter after hearing that confession, especially since the woman in her arms appeared to understand what she was trying to say.
I need to ask a couple of things, primarily due to my primary relationship. I gather the first is, what are my feelings about Shota and Hisashi?
After Namiri's affirmative nod and chuckle, the nurse answered,
I don't spend as much time around them as I do you, so there hasn't been much of a basis to form feelings towards them. That said, while I do not look at either of them in a romantic light, I can see why you love them so much. I do love them as well, in a more familiar way. Kinda like brothers in a way. I also want to tease Mr. Insomnia about being his normal grumpy self, but I'm not quite sure how he'd take it from me. Oh, he'd be grumpy about it, but his eyes would tell you be delighted you did. They're in the dining room if you want to ask them yourself how they feel about you.
The dominatrix themed hero responded.
But I'm glad there's something there at least. It means something can grow from it, given time. True enough. Believe it or not, there's a reason I'm bringing this up. Beyond trying to clarify where we are relationship-wise.
Again, the confessing woman braced herself and gulped, giving the hand in hers a squeeze.
Inko, this house was felt more like home since you and Izuku moved in than it ever had. Before, we three weren't very attached to the place. This was a place where we slept and other things, but it could easily be replaced. There were no real memories here, if you know what I mean. Then you and your son moved in and made memories here, turning this house from a place to hang our costumes to an actual home we look forward to going to every night. I don't want that to go away once the danger for your child decreases. Would you consider making the move into our home permanent? Would you consider joining our family?
Ika was silent for a couple of minutes this time, as she thought through the implications of the questions she was asked. She was prepared to do anything for her daughter's happiness, and she could tell that her daughter was happier here with this family than she was as Izuku in the apartment.
I think that as far as considering ourselves to be living here permanently goes, I would love to. And Yume would be ecstatic about it. Were that the only consideration, I would say yes in a heartbeat. But I need to know how we would fit in with your family. More to the point, are you asking me to marry you? And would that be just you or all three of you? Putting aside legal considerations for a moment, I can say we'd consider you as family in whatever role you want. Our marriage is a true group poly relationship. We are each married to the other two equally. That's how it's legally set up as well. Under those guidelines, I'm not asking you to marry us, primarily due to the need for the men to be present and asking at the same time. And while they support me fully in my request for you to join us, they, like me, feel that a formal marriage proposal could only be made after we get to know you well enough to determine if you'd welcome such an invitation. In other words, you three figured I was something akin to a romantic, and wanted to be careful not to destroy any relationships we built, Inko observed. Yes, that and some other questions we need to be answered,
Namiri confirmed.
I'm pansexual, if that's what you're alluding to,
Came the response to that statement.
There were times when I forgot you were married and wondered if you were trying to seduce me. You were too good at your persona, Namiri-chan.
The two women shared a laugh at that comment before the mother of the house continued.
Okay, I think I get the general gist of what you're asking. I would love to join your family and make this living arrangement permanent. As far as your marriage goes, I will not say that I'm opposed to joining it. However, I need to get to know the men a bit better before you all ask me. I think for now, if anyone asks, I can be their sister and your queer platonic significant other. If they really want labels. Will that do?
A broad, bright smile formed on the purple-haired woman's lips as she drew the green-haired woman into a hug.
That sounds wonderful, Inkle dear, she exclaimed. Thank you.
The newest adult family member smiled just as widely as she returned the hug.
You're welcome,
she said, giving her significant other a kiss on the cheek. As they separated, she called out,
Okay, guys, you can stop eavesdropping and come in.
The two men entered, each wearing warm smiles, which Inko mentally remarked looked odd but nice on the constantly sleep-deprived man.
On behalf of Sho and myself, congratulations and welcome,
the blonde loudly exclaimed. Iko could only hope her daughter was too tired to wake up. Meanwhile, in her bedroom, said child had a suspicion of what caused her mentor's shout.
Congratulations, Mom. Mama Namiri,
she mumbled as she turned over and went back to sleep. Ooh! Okay, I can't hold my excitement. She knows. Sorry. Okay, back to the chapter. The next morning started interestingly enough. Yume woke up about 10 minutes before her alarm went off and absent-mindedly trudged to the bathroom. As she left the bathroom, she almost rocked right into Aizawa, who was looking at her with a frown. "A rule of this house, young lady," he said in a firm voice. "You do not leave your room without at least a robe on, if not fully dressed, even if you have to go to the bathroom. I have no desire to see your body first thing in the morning, regardless of what way you're presenting. Understood?" Yume let out a soft eep and covered her front with her arms.
Aye, Aizawa-sensei.
She exclaimed as her face turned beet red. Once the man was assured the message was understood, he stepped to the side to allow the teen girl access to the hall and ultimately her room. The song-sexual girl made a beeline to the room and quickly got changed into her workout clothing. Once she calmed down, she went on a run, followed by her morning workout routine for the day. The workout completed, she made sure to grab her clothes and proceeded to the bathroom to take a shower. By the time she was done, both of her mothers were up, and that was really exciting for her to think, and dressed for the day. Her biological mother was in her nurse's scrubs while Namiri was sitting at the table with a cup of coffee in her hand. Instead of reading the news from her tablet, however, she was watching the green-haired woman bustle around the kitchen in a dance of food preparation, complete with flying utensils. Yume gave them both her traditional morning greetings, inwardly taking note that her mother blushed as the food was brought to the table. As all the adults sat at the table, a rarity for morning meals, Yume correctly conjectured they were all about to talk about the change in the relationship. Yume made a play of keeping an expressionless face until they finished explaining everything, then said,
Well, I can't very well give 3 pro heroes the shovel talk, so all I'm going to say is please take care of my mother.
She broke into a wide grin at the end of that, which earned a cheeky brat from Aizawa and a twin pistol salute from Azashi. Iko cried out her name while Namiri laughed wildly. Eri simply looked up at Yume and asked,
What's the shovel talk?
This caused all the adults to break into laughter again as Yume tried to explain to Eri.
It's traditional that when someone in your family finds someone they're serious about, the family members basically warn that someone not hurt the family member. I don't get it,
The little girl answered. I'll explain it more when you get older, Eri-chan, Hizashi announced in an attempt to keep the little girl innocent of such things a bit longer. In the meantime, think of it as an initiation of sorts into the family.
Anyways, I think it's great that you two have finally expressed your feelings,
Yume finally said.
I'll say this. I saw this coming even though we were going through all the drama with my trial and such. So, my friends and I got together and recorded something for you.
The adults blinked as Yume got up and walked over to the music player and paused the morning playlist. Connecting her own device to it, she scrolled through the recorded songs before finding the one they prepared. So the song that they did is Chasing Cars by Snow Patrol. We'll do it all, everything on our own. Namuri and Ika both looked as surprised as Yume turned around and started to sing along with her own voice. Not only did they not expect this, but they also did not expect the song choice. If I just lay here, would you lie with me and just forget the world? Shota and Azashi looked at each other, nodded once, then got up and stood behind the two women. The men rested tender hands on the women's shoulders, with Shota behind Inko and Azashi behind Namiri. Forget what we're told before we get too old. Show me a garden that's bursting into life. The women looked toward each other and reached for each other's hands at the same time the men did the same. Namiri rested her other hand on Azashi's hand, while Inko did the same with Shota, though she also spared a moment to look up and smile at the man. I need your grace to remind me to find my own. At this part of the song, Yume looked directly at his biological mother and smiled through the words. That was a mistake, it should be her. Sorry. It became clear to all the adults that Yume looked up to her mother. Inko herself understood the message her daughter was saying, and slow tears started to stream down her face as her smile grew wider. All that I am, all that I ever was, is here in your perfect eyes. This part of the song was sung to both women, a tribute to all that they were and all that they had done, not just for her, but for each other.
The women were wondering, not for the first time, how their daughter knew what was happening behind the scenes. Now the song seemed as much as a dedication for them as for their relationship. Hisashi looked at his daughter proudly, and just wondered how long it took for her to find this song. He wished he had been recording this now, and made a mental note to see if he could get her to do a full cover just like this one. If I just lay here, would you lie with me and just forget the world? As the song ended, the adults just looked at each other. Eri got down out of her chair and went to hug her sister, saying,
You sing really good, Mei-chan.
This seemed to break everyone out of their moment as the women both got up and hugged her.
That was wonderful, Mei-chan.
The mother said to their daughter as they immersed themselves in the family moment.
So, who's going to take me to school today?
Turned out to be the next big question of the day. The answer to which was Inko and Yamiri. Just before they left, a courier arrived from her psychologist with the originals of her RLT paperwork, so they had everything they needed when they were brought before the principal and her homeroom teacher. The meeting was thankfully short, since Yume was already on record due to her quirk, so a notation was made for her to go after school to pick up more uniforms. All of that led to her once again standing outside the classroom door while homeroom started. One sec, y'all. Sorry, I lost my place. One sec. Alright. All of that led to her once again standing outside the classroom door while homeroom started.
As some of you probably noted, Midoriya-san is not at his desk.
Iga-sensei started after taking roll.
The reason for this is rather simple, but at the same time complex. Come in and reintroduce yourself.
Taking a deep breath, the song sexual stepped through the doorway and walked to the chalkboard to write her name on the board.
I am Midoriya Yume. I attended this class before as Midoriya Izuku, but due to medical complications and other reasons, I will be attending school for at least the next couple of months as female. Please take care of me,
she said with a bow. One boy up front raised his hand after the introduction, which Iga-sensei called upon after the new girl raised up from her bow. What kind of medical complications? Does this mean you're a tranny now?
Ogura-san, that language is highly inappropriate,
the teacher immediately announced, reprimanding the student.
I choose not to divulge the medical condition. I will say it has to do with my quirk and leave it at that. And no, I'm not really fully transgender in the sense that you are thinking of,
Yume tried to answer. For some reason, she found it easier to speak when she presented as female.
Sounds fishy to me, just saying,
the boy said, frowning as the teacher once again rebuked the boy. Yume looked at the teacher in a silent plea to be allowed to go to her seat, which the man allowed with a nod. A part of her felt as if she were back at Aldera, and this was just the start of the teasing, but in the other direction. However, as she neared her desk, her friends all gave her a thumbs up, and Kanoko giving her some whispered encouragement.
Don't forget, there's a meeting after school,
she heard from Momo.
That's right. Training is pushed back an hour to allow for him to attend the LGBTQ+ club meetings,
she thought to herself. This brought a smile to her face as she remembered she had support, even if some people turned out to be bullies. The green-haired girl simply nodded to her before sitting down to start class. The rest of the morning went pretty much anticlimactically normal. School was school, and the staff of Kamine Junior High were as different from those of now-defunct Altera Middle as day was tonight. Even the other students seemed to leave her alone for the most part,
allowing her time to actively chat amongst her friends between classes. It was only at lunch when there was a slight hiccup in the form of Okada, who waited until the teacher left the room before approaching Yume's desk. So, you never answered my question from earlier. You are drowning now or what? The boy asked as he got closer. Not that it's any of your business, the songster answered. But I'm not officially anything yet. Or at least, I don't feel like I should have to explain the finer details of what is going on to people who barely know me. Ida took a couple of steps closer and put a hand on Yume's shoulder. It is highly inappropriate for you to continue this line of questioning, Ogata-san. Iga-sensei already declared such questions not suitable for a class environment. This statement was accompanied by the blue-haired boy chopping at the air with his free hand. But this isn't class time, is it? Their classmate mocks. It's lunchtime, and I think enough rules have been bent for him as it is. He continued, pointing. Trigger warning. Sorry, I was not warned of it at the beginning of the chapter, but this is leaning into very transphobic events, I can tell, and I'ma have to process that after, I guess. Sorry. Just a sec. Sorry, guys. I just needed a second to collect myself a bit. Anyways. Where were we? Okay. Pointing a finger directly at Yume with a scowl on his face. And now he's going to be able to use the female restrooms and locker rooms. My girlfriend is in this class, and I don't want him perving over her. Yume felt her face heat up even as her fist clenched. Her eyes narrowed but did not close. Instead of embarrassment, she started to feel anger, even as her body started shaking. She was trying to find the right words to say before Kanoko spoke up. First, she's presenting as a female right now, so the correct form of address would be the female honorifics, not the male. And I am Shroom, you know what? You know that? Second, never once has Yume given any indication that she is the type to perv over anyone. She's not a sexual predator, and as her friend, I take offense to what you are implying. Okada's turquoise eyes shifted from Yume to the mushroom girl for a moment just before he said, Go sit on a mushroom and stay out of this. Yume's other friends gasped and failed to notice as Todoroki slipped out of his seat. Yume herself did notice, but was uncertain what the heterochromatic boy was up to. Rather than worry about that, she turned her attention back to the brown-haired boy, even as her anger began to increase. Ogata-san, if you have a problem with me, talk to me. Don't take it out on my friends. She ground out as her eyes narrowed. Are you even going to deny that you're going to doing this to perv on the girls? The confrontational boy spat back at her. So far, none of you seem to be able to stand up for yourself. And to think I felt sorry for you when we were forced to watch that trial.
Ogata-kun! A female voice shouted from behind him. Yume glanced around the scowling boy to see another of her classmates, a violet-haired teenager with sparkling amethyst-colored eyes, glaring at the boy in front of her. The other girl's hands were curled up into fists as she stood there shaking. Stop this right now! Midoriya-chan has done nothing wrong! The angry boy's head snapped up when he heard the girl's voice, and Yume noted a slight tremor in the boy's arms as he turned his head to look behind him. But, Cho-chan... Don't put Cho-chan me! The girl retorted back. Midoriya-chan has been nothing but kind and considerate of everyone here from the first day. She was a little shy at first, but in that trial showed us why. How does any of that translate to pervert? But she... Sorry. I'm really sorry, guys. It's gonna kill me saying this line. Jesus Christ. Sorry, guys. Please, anyone that this is affecting, do whatever is necessary, including if you need to skip this part of the chapter. Do whatever is necessary to take care of yourselves, please. I'm probably going to have to talk to someone after this, but I'm sure it's not going to last much longer. Sorry. But she's a tranny. Trannies are all perverts, the boy exclaimed frustratedly. His hands flew up to his mouth as those words left it, his eyes becoming wide as he remembered that both Momo and Ida, prominent members of the school's LGBTQ+ club, had been backing Yume up all along. The entire room could hear Ida's teeth grind as his expression hardened, but that was not the most intense reaction. The most intense reaction came from the intense aura of anger that came from Yaruro's and Momo, as she took a couple of steps forward. Excuse me? But I don't think I heard you correctly. Would you care to repeat that last statement? Oh, I completely misread that line. The rich girl's words sounded polite and calm, and her face was almost sweetly polite. But there was something in the way her eyes looked at the angry man that made her expression rather frightening. Ogata stuttered as he stood caught between his girlfriend and the vice president of the LGBTQ+ club. I would like to know what he said as well, came another new voice from behind Ogata's girlfriend. Everyone looked toward the origin of the voice to see Iga-sensei with Todoroki standing beside him. He called me a tranny, and went on to say that all trannies are perverts. Yume said quietly as she curled her fist on the desk in front of her. The bullied teen stood up and glared at the boy, holding back tears as she said, My apologies to Cho-chan, but I'm not interested in her. The people interested in don't even go to the school, and even when I do see them, I'm not someone who would peek on them. I also think Ogata-san forgets that the school has separate bathrooms and locker areas for those who identify as something other than cisgender, Ida said disapprovingly. This is something I know that Midoriya-san has already applied to use. Indeed, Iga-sensei replied. Yaoyorozu-san, Komori-san, why don't you take Midoriya-san to the cafeteria for lunch? I am going to have a little talk with Ogata-san. Hi, Sensei, the two girls answered as they drew the song user away from the rest of her friends following close behind. Yume was quite proud of herself the rest of the day. It was a small step standing up to Ogata, but it signified real progress. She stood up for herself more than she had ever done as Isuku. And more than that, she stood up for her friends. This, she felt, was the first step to becoming a hero. Her psychologist had advised her to be calm and to explain herself fully, and she did. It didn't stop him completely, but it made the attacks a bit more bearable. But what had surprised her most about the altercation at lunch was the people that stood up for her and the teacher that believed her. She had felt like crying when Kinako-chan first started defending her, and was thanking her lucky stars when Momo-chan and Nita-kun did the same. She had real friends. And then there was Todoroki-kun. The boy actually went and got Iga-sensei, and the sensei took her side. She thought she had died and gone to heaven then. No doubt about it. While not perfect, this school was leagues better than Aldera ever even thought to be. It was those thoughts that took her all the way through the rest of her school day. To her surprise, the choir director actually designated Izuku as lead singer for the next song they were to learn. This came as a surprise to the entire class, as he was normally designated as a part of the background sound crew, as the choir didn't use a band or musical instruments. This was to avoid her inadvertently setting off her quirk in the middle of a performance, so she understood fully. But the reason the director had for having her sing lead floored her when they spoke in private about the selection. Got to remember their gender. I don't remember this teacher. 1 second, y'all. Okay. Sorry, y'all. Midoriya-chan. Normally, we try to avoid your quirk activating because we don't want to give the audience that much of a show, and we can never tell if a song will resonate with you until you sing it. But this time, that's what we want. Your quirk counselor has advised us that you now have some control over the thought and feelings that get projected for non-transformative songs. Is that true? Yume nodded and replied.
Hi, Sensei. I can't withhold them altogether, but I can now actively pick and choose what memories I show.
Imida-sensei nodded and smiled. Perfect. You see, the closing of a certain school system sparked a nationwide drive for depression awareness. As such, we have been asked to sing a song about survival at an upcoming assembly. I'm aware of what happened, and I know this may be difficult, but would you consider taking the lead on this song? I think it would make all the difference in the world if it's sung by someone who actually survived depression.
I'm not fully in remission yet, Sensei.
The green-haired girl said, her voice wobbly from the emotions inside her. I know, Midoriya-san, but I think it might help you too. If you want, you can talk it over with your counselor and see what she says. The director offered. If it makes any difference. I did talk with our school's counselor about this before I pitched it. A part of the song Quirk user didn't want to do this, primarily because it didn't feel right. She was getting better, but she wasn't fully out of depression yet. Still, another part wanted to do this for others, though she had a hard time thinking who could be in her position here.
Can I give you an answer before class tomorrow?
The man actually gave her a wide smile and nodded. Good. I had hoped you would take time to think about this. I know this would be tough for you, Midoriya-san, especially since this drive is partly a result of what happened to you at your old school. The only reason I had thought of asking you to do this at all is because of what you did for your homeroom class. You showed them the bad, so I thought you might want to show them how the bad can be turned into good. That made a little more sense to Yume, who nodded.
I just have to hope that my quirk doesn't decide to reverse things, because I'm presenting female at the moment.
The director blinked at that as if he hadn't thought about that,
But before he could say anything, the intersex teen continued.
We'll be testing that out tonight at training since it's a short session. That's another reason I want to wait to give you an answer.
Very wise decision, Midori-san. I hope things turn out well, however it goes. With that, the choir went through non-vocal exercises for the song and mapped out positioning since Yume would be out front of the main choir body instead of in the back for a cappella sound accompaniment. They were each given their lyric sheets and instructed to run through it a couple of times that night for practice and any necessary adjustments to be made the next day. No one mentioned what they might see or feel during the performance, but the group seemed to have a varying amounts of apprehension, given who was supposed to be the lead for that performance. Choir was the last class of the day, and as usual, Komori joined him as they left the classroom.
Are you going to do it, Yume-chan? I don't know. On the one hand, it sounds like there would be a lot of good that can come out of this,
she said thoughtfully.
On the other hand, it's putting myself out there in ways I'm not sure I'm ready for yet.
The brunette nodded thoughtfully as they made their way toward the classroom on the 4th floor where the club normally met.
I know. Even if you can now control the memories you project, that still leaves you quite vulnerable. Yeah,
she sighed. She would have said more, but the sounds of an angry man up ahead grabbed their attention.
That sounds like it's coming from the club room. And it sounds a bit older than most of our classmates,
the mushroom girl whispered.
This was heard echoing through the halls before the rest became undecipherable. The voice was deep and booming, a definite bass. The two friends looked at each other in apprehension, silently asking if they wanted to risk walking into that.
Excuse me, but hero or not, this is a safe place and we do not allow that kind of derogatory language here, another male's voice exclaimed. This one, both of the teens recognized as belonging to their friend Ida. That declaration, along with the mention of a hero being chastised by their friend, was enough. Without even a second thought, Yume and Komori both turned toward the argument and began to speedwalk to the club room. Not even a minute later, they turned a corner and saw a scene that caused Yume's heart to clench. In the hallway stood Endeavor, in his full uniform. His face was covered by the flaming beard, mustache, and eye mask as he normally wore, but the scowl on his face was plainly evident. Standing in front of the doorway was Shoto, who was standing with his hands in his pockets looking straight ahead. The boy wore the same emotionless expression he had always had before he talked to President Mike and Eraserhead. Just behind him, and to either side of the door, stood Momo-chan and Ida-kun, who seemed to be rather upset.
You dare to chastise me, boy,
the hero retorted, his flames growing hotter.
People like you should remember to respect your betters. You wouldn't want your brother finding out how you address a top 10 hero after all.
His attention turned toward the heiress as he added,
And I would think of your family's position if I were you. My agency spends quite a bit of money at your business.
Momo's face hardened as the threat is given, evident by her mouth drawing into a thin line. Something in Yume snapped as she realized that the flame hero was using his position to shut his friends down. She took a deep breath and walked closer to the group so as not to yell. When she asked,
Excuse me, but can I ask what's going on here? I was under the impression that my sparring partner would be available today.
The flaming man turned his attention to the two approaching girls, his eyes scanning them before settling on the one who spoke.
I know of no such arrangement between my masterpiece and a girl. I know he is gaining experience by training with a boy and with a highly adaptable Quirk, but you are obviously not him, so leave.
The Greenhead's friends all got even more angry at the way the man was talking to her, but she did not let his words affect her. Instead, she simply smiled and replied,
I'm sorry, Did you ever inquire as to what that boy's quirk does?
She paused a moment to ensure that he would be answering in the negative before she cut him off by saying,
Essentially, songs sung by or about women turn the boy into a teenage version of the appropriate woman and gives him powers associated with that person. Now, there's a lot more involved with that, but that's the bare bones basics of the quirk. And I just came from choir practice. In other words, let me introduce myself. When I am a boy, I am Midoriya Izuku. When I am in female form, as I am now, I am Midoriya Yume.
The man was rendered speechless from this revelation. It was very obvious that he had not truly inquired about the specifics of the other user's quirk. Other than that, it was very powerful and very adaptable, just as she has said. With that bare-bones basic understanding and the evidence in front of him, it became quickly evident he had made a mistake in his identification. Very well. Then why are you not going to training? Why are you wasting time with these dregs of society? Multiple gasps could be heard from inside the classroom, and one from further down the hall. The students immediately around the number 2 hero held back their gasps, though that remark sparked a sense of righteous anger in the song quirk user.
Because, in a way, this is part of my training endeavor, San.
She quickly held up both hands and waved them side to side before saying,
Let me explain. My quirk effectively turns me into a half-boy, half-girl person physically. I believe you know the term intersex.
At the hero's nod, she says,
Due to prior circumstances at my old school, I could not get the tools to deal with that socially. As you know, part of a hero's job is to work with people, even if you focus on villain takedowns. As such, I come here to this club to learn those social skills.
Being in the public, Endeavor at least had the presence of mind not to declare such training unnecessary, though Yume and her friends knew full well that's how he viewed it. He was now aware there was a school faculty member behind him thanks to the gasp, and he was already treading a thin line with the family courts over his wife, even though no one knew of that. He paid good money to keep it that way after all. Answering that way would lead to more questions he could not afford, but still, I fail to see the reason for Shoto to attend these meetings. He does not need this socialization training. It will not make him stronger. Yume took a deep breath to calm the anxiety welling inside of her. It was one thing to face a transphobic bully in class. It was something else to face down a hero like Endeavor.
Endeavor-sama,
she started, even though calling him Sama left a really bad taste in her mouth.
President Mike-sensei thought it best that he be in the meeting with me for convenience's sake. That way I don't have to go find him after the meeting is over, and he doesn't tire himself out before the main training begins. As such, we're following orders given to us by your sensei. I humbly ask for any further questions to be directed to him.
The flaming man's scowl deepened for about half a minute before setting into a normal glare he gives everyone. Yume felt the pressure on her lessen when that happened, and it took all her willpower to avoid collapsing on the floor. Very well. I shall call President Mike and voice my concerns to him. Shoto may attend these meetings for now. This declaration complete, he turned and walked away from the crew. Everyone waited until the man was gone before Komori turned to look at her friend.
Are you okay, Yuma-chan?
Yume was shaking quite a bit now that she didn't have to appear strong, but she herself couldn't tell if it was her nerves acting up or if it was anger. The two were well mixed inside of her.
Not at the moment, but I will be once I can sit down.
She then looked at Todoroki and saw him closed off to the world still.
So, forgive me if I misstep, but Shoto-kun?
She started. The boy in question turned toward her when she called him by his first name, blinked, then said, Shoto's fine. I am beginning to really hate my last name. She gave him a shaky but comforting smile as she continued.
There's something that Namiri Mama once told me that I think you need to hear. This too shall pass.
That said, she turned to her 2 other well-to-do friends and said,
I'll join you inside in a couple of minutes. I need to call President Mike Sensei and warn him.
After each of her friends was assured that she'd be okay, they went in to allow her to make her phone call. The faculty advisor of the club just nodded to her as he passed and said nothing about her using her cell phone, since it was after school hours. As she waited to be connected to her papa, she thought about this confrontation and the look on Shoto's face. Then about the request from the choir director.
I'll do it. I'll do it for Shoto-kun and others like him. Imira Sensei is right. I am the right person for the job.
With a new sense of determination inside, she started to fill the voice hero in on what was going on. Alright, so I want to apologize again for no warning on the triggers from this chapter. I had no warning on it either, otherwise I would have let you know. I don't read through them in advance so that I can have honest reactions to stuff, you know? And I feel really, 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 really bad that I didn't give you guys enough warning on that, so I really apologize. If you give me just a minute or two, I need to collect myself before this next chapter. But then we'll get into the 3rd chapter of the day. Be back in a few, guys. Alright. Chapter 13, A Hero's Origin. Trigger warnings for this chapter. Brief discussions of depression and abuse and bullying. So, if any of those are a trigger warning for you, feel free to do whatever is necessary for you to handle and process those emotions, whether it be skipping this chapter or having someone nearby to talk things out. I'm also available in the comments section fairly often, and I reply to everything. So if you need to if you won't feel compelled to talk about it in the comments section, I'm not going to shut down conversation like that. But I will do my best to help you talk through those things if that's what you wish. Having said that, let's go ahead and get started on chapter 13. Yume's first LGBTQ+ meeting could have gone better, all things considered. Most of the group were grumbling over Endeavor's words. They were supportive enough of Todoroki and especially supportive of Yume, but the confrontation on their very doorstep left a sour taste in their mouths.
So the majority of the meeting was spent with the group working through their feelings about the number 2 hero, which threatened to bleed over to the other heroes as a whole. Yume did her best to assure... I don't know that word. Assuage their concerns? But eventually, she wound up having to talk more about how she was saved by heroes before transferring to this school, than about more immediate concerns. However, she left a lot of things out about her experiences to prevent from providing more proof of prejudice. After all, All Might had worked hard to prove that he was not the person he portrayed on that roof. She felt he deserved a chance to continue to prove he could change. Even though she attempted to remind them that their society had by and large become accepting of them, a part of her seethed in anger over the actions of Todoroki Sr. She didn't know why she felt it that way at first, but the conversation at the radio station that night with Todoroki-kun soon brought the reason to the surface. Her friend lived in an environment that was so much like her former school that it was just sad. Only instead of a whole group of bullies, there was one overriding bully that cut off any possible avenue of support he could get from other family members. First, he was torn away from his siblings with the admonition that he was different, better than them. Then he was separated from his mother, who was driven mad by his father's drive to beat All Might and abuse in the guise of training. Her dad's and Nimiri Mama had made discreet inquiries through the back channels to see what could be done with only mixed results. As the adults told her at the beginning, the Flame Hero was not only very powerful power-wise, but he had also amassed a great deal of political and monetary power that basically made challenging him on legal grounds a near impossible task. So far, the only thing they could do is fortify an already existing open case concerning the man's treatment of his wife by pointing out inconsistencies in the hero's stories and giving the investigative team ideas of where to look to find evidence. However, they were unable to tell if even these efforts would bear fruit. And as shocking as the episode prior to that meeting was, there was nothing illegal about it. Both Todoroki-kun and her knew that the only thing they could hope for was for the Ida and Yayorozu families to start distancing themselves from the man. The training session had started out with some light maintenance training, followed by weapons training. By this time, she had been getting a good handle on using both staves and swords, though unlike Momo-chan, she would not be focusing on shields. The characters she could become that used swords or sword-like weapons never used them, opting for styles of combat that utilized speed and agility over strength. Her dad's added in endurance training as well, simply because the time constraints on her quirk was such that she needed to be able to work just as much in her original form as she would in her transformed forms. Even this did not take into account the other requirements some of her forms had. The rest was devoted to testing out her quirk to ensure it still did what it had been doing. Specifically, they tested out songs sung by males to ensure that she didn't start to transform into males, now that her body was mutating the way it was. Furthermore, in light of her then upcoming performance, they started to work out what she would be using with the song when she was to be singing. It turned out that their fears on the first concern were alleviated. Her quirk would not transform her to purely male. But they also learned that her quirk could not be boosted by electronic equipment. To offset this, it gave her a powerful set of lungs that could project her voice over significant distances without the need for such equipment. For example, she could easily make her voice heard over music in an auditorium without straining her voice or the need for a microphone. It also gave her perfect recall of lyrics, regardless of the language, after hearing it only once. This made learning how to speak foreign languages much easier. Perhaps because of this feature and much to President Mike's delight, she was already fluent in American English, which was considered the hardest language for any Asian to learn. Even with these benefits, she still couldn't sing through sufficiently soundproofed walls. This led them to wonder how she affected the people of their old apartment complex that day, which was something that President Mike could not answer. He could only theorize that her quirk was still fluctuating in and out of her control. This would have made the power act in wildly different ways in some respects, while solidifying other aspects of her quirk. Whether or not she would eventually be able to overcome the visibility requirement of her quirk would remain a mystery at that point in time. With all of that information firmly in mind, Yume updated both her school counselor and the choir director with the information they each needed to know. She also accepted the position offered to her and learned they only had 1 week to finish the preparations for the school assembly. The remainder of the week leading up to the weekend would be spent not only practicing the song with the crew, but exposing the choir and those who would be present with them to the memories and feelings they would be experiencing. This song would not be performed a cappella. Therefore, the band had to be exposed as well. The school counselor set aside time for anyone from this group who needed to speak to someone, which only a couple of the students needed that level of help. The others talked amongst themselves and to Yume, who earned more respect in their eyes as a result. This led up to Yume being emotionally drained by the last class on that Saturday. Fortunately, she did not have choir class on Saturdays. She was instructed by the director and by the school counselor to not practice the song over the weekend. They noted the toll this was putting on the young intersex girl and advised her to take a break. And since this was the weekend that the Pussycat Space would not be available for training, she would be free to do something equally important and distracting, but also somewhat nerve-wracking: shopping. More specifically, she needed to flesh out her wardrobe. The reveal party had resulted in her having just barely enough clothes to reach the weekend. It was decided between her parents and her friends that Saturday after school would be dedicated for shopping not only for clothes, but makeup and hygiene items as well. This would start with Momo-chan bringing her to a hair salon where they would attempt to tame her hair. Therefore, it was a nervous Yume that walked with her tall friend toward a rather nondescript-looking building that looked more like a house nestled behind a business on a cross street. Numeri Mama's car was already there, meaning that Ochako-chan and Su-chan would be already inside.
Momo-chan?
She tentatively asked, to catch the rich girl's attention.
I'm not doubting your judgment or anything, but this seems a little low-key, or perhaps low-class, for what you would expect from my hairdresser.
The heiress asked amusedly. At Yume's tentative nod, the taller girl giggled softly and said,
Don't worry, I don't take offense at that observation, Yume-chan. In the past, I have found the best hairstylists come in one of two varieties. The first is they run huge salons full of assistants, rarely touching hair of anyone whose net worth is less than 8 or 9 figures. Those types tend to be very selective of their clients, and while one can get styles from them fit for world-renowned magazines, just getting an initial appointment for their salons normally requires one to be either born into an influential family, or to be interesting enough for them to circumvent the waiting list. This place does not look like it could house that kind of artist,
Yume observed as they climbed the steps to the front door. A wood plaque by the front door read simply, Classic Hairstyles.
Yes, because that is because my family and I only use those kinds of stylists when we need to for publicity shoots. And even then, they're only allowed to do temporary styles. No, we prefer the second kind of stylist. This kind runs a small business to select clienteles. They don't advertise, they operate on word of mouth, and they can make house calls if needs must be. While they know they are worth every yen spent, they take new clients on recommendation from their current clients. And trust me, they make enough money that they can name their own prices.
After explaining this to her friend, the tall, graceful woman opened the door and gestured for Yume to enter. The inside of the house showed its true function.
There was a very small waiting area immediately inside the door with a small counter to the left. The counter ran about 4 feet, just long enough to hold a computer sitting atop a metallic box. There was a wide walkway leading into the salon area proper. Beyond the walkway, the song user could see 3 stylish chairs in front of small sinks like she was used to seeing in other places. The only thing different from what she was used to seeing is that there was more than enough room for a second row of styling chairs on the other side, at least by her old standards, but those chairs were not present. Indeed, there were 3 hair dyeing chairs on the left. The rest of the room was taken up by 2 carts piled high with various nail polishes and equipment that the young teen could not identify. The rest of the waiting area was walled off from the salon area by 6-inch thick glass cubes cemented together. There wasn't really an area where hair care products were displayed, leading Yume to wonder if they even sold them here, which went against every expectation she had for a salon. The area was filled with rather comfortable but fancy-looking recliners, with a table in the center with some magazines were set. Both of the Greenettes' moms sat in those seats. They looked up from the magazines as the teen girls entered before getting up to greet them. "There you are," Inko said with a wide grin while she hugged her daughter. Namiri exchanged a brief hug with Momo-chan at the same time and seemed to start a quiet conversation, while the green-haired adult asked her daughter, "How was school today?" "Not so bad. Got the cold shoulder from Hokuto-san and a couple of his friends from another class, but it was only for an hour," said daughter answer. "If that's all he does, I can live with it. Dedicated deduction was interesting. We covered an unsolved case in Okinawa today. Ida-kun actually made an observation nobody seemed to catch." "I'd bet you did, but you waited to see if someone else would say anything first, didn't you?" the mother asked knowingly. The girl half-whined. "He called me on it after class, too. I just wish people would understand I don't want to appear greedy." "No one would think you're hogging the spotlight, sweetie. Face it, if you and Komori-chan manage to do what you want to do, it will only be natural for you to claim as much of it as you can. Ida-san knows this." The teen could only nod defeatedly at her mother's words. She knew her mother was right. It was just a part of her left over from her Altair's days that made her shy away from being too noticed at times. Yume was brought out of her musings by a hand being softly placed on her shoulder. She turned around to see Momo-chan looking at her with a soft smile. Once their eyes met, the taller girl began to speak. "Yume-san, I would like you to meet a dear friend of my family's. This is Hirauko Amaya, the lead stylist in this salon. She's been taking care of my family's hair and overseeing other aspects of our outward appearance since before I was born." The greenette teen turned in the direction her friend had indicated and bowed deeply to the woman. Hello, Hirauko-san. It's a pleasure to meet you." "So respectful," the older woman replied before returning a shallow bow of her own. "I've heard quite a few things about you from Momo-chan. You seem to have greatly impressed her, and I can see why. She has asked me to take you as a client, so if you will follow me to a chair, we can get started to reveal the beauty behind the cute girl I see before me." I am in your care," Yume returned, somewhat flustered at the mention of the heiress's high opinion of her. She followed the older woman to the chair. As they walked, the teen could not help but remark the wavy mint green hair seemed to sway along the woman's back. Despite the woman's apparent age, there wasn't any gray in it. As they reached the seat, the woman turned around and gestured for the teen to sit down, before looking from her to the chair with silver eyes. "Okay, you appear to have naturally curly hair, so the question becomes what you want to do with it. Straighten, partially straighten, or keep it the way it is. Unfortunately, I don't think dyes will take too well with you. The most we could do is give you highlights in brighter green. So, Yume-chan, what do you think?" As she thought over her choices, she began to relax slightly. She could begin to like this woman. She just had a nature that seemed to put people at ease. So, with a little more confidence, they came to an agreement of what style would look best on her. Even while they talked and bounced ideas off of each other, the singer could see her rich friend sitting with her moms and plotting something. Funny, the thought of that didn't seem to make her anxious at all. To say their classmates were surprised by Yume's new look when she returned to class the following Monday would be something of an understatement. With her stylist's guidance, it was decided they would partially straighten her hair, but only by relaxing the curls so her hair flowed down her back to her shoulders. She would let her grow out a bit to where it would reach her shoulder blades, and with the help of some new hair care products, it would eventually be trained into its new style within a few months. The girl also wore makeup, though that was kept to a minimum, with only a light dusting of color around her eyes, done in 2 shades of purple, that seemed to draw out her eyes and provide a natural break between her hair and her eyes. The entire day, she watched people do double and triple takes when they first saw her. She thought Shoto-kun was going to fall flat on his face at one point. Why did that make her feel warm inside? At the end of the day on Monday, the previously bullied girl had an incredible boost of confidence from the reactions of her peers. Something still felt off inside, but she couldn't help but to realize that now that she wasn't denying and downgrading the feminine part of her nature, she felt less anxious around others. She knew she had a couple more weeks to go before she addressed the results of this test with her psychologist, but so far it felt nice. Not fully right, but nice. It didn't hurt that she had a completely new wardrobe, both of clothes and furniture, thanks to combined efforts of her mother, Numeri Mama, and Momo-chan. It turned out that her tall friend was firmly insistent she be able to contribute to the shopping expedition. As she had put it, Yume-chan is a teenager who has not accepted female clothing for her entire childhood. By this time, she would have had several things already, including cosmetics and sleepwear. This trip is meant to outfit her with these things, and thus would cost more than the most households can cover in such a month, much less a week. She has been a very good friend and an immense help to me, so I am returning the favor. Please, let me at least help cover the cost. Her parents had to eventually agree. But even though she was dressing like a girl full-time now, she was adamant that she kept her boy clothes as well, even though she couldn't exactly say why. Her mom might have thought it was for sentimentality's sake. Not really, while Numeri Mama had actually expressed that it represented a safety net of sorts for the teen. Again, not really. Yumi had promised them she would try to figure out why she wanted to keep the boys' clothes. However, most of her mental focus centered around the student assembly on that Wednesday. That day had finally arrived and the weather was bright and warm. Even though it was toward the end of summer, the warm weather seemed to resolutely keep its grip on their area of Japan. Because of this, Yume carried a brush and some relaxant with her to school so she could touch up her looks while changing into her choir uniform. The choir members wore the skirt and blouse, or pants and shirt, of their school uniform, but instead of their school jacket, they wore light gray robes that went to their ankles with light turquoise trim. The only exception to that rule were those who would be the central performers. They added a dark turquoise sash that draped across both shoulders. That ended at arrow points. In the center of each point was the school's emblem. Belts could be worn outside the robes at the waist if desired. Yume found herself odd that she was actually wearing the sash of the central performer. She had opted for a loose, silver belt that hung off of her hips and formed a wide Y in front. Even though the tail was short, her nerves were starting to get to her, and she couldn't help but to fiddle with her hair, the sash, and her belt over and over again until she felt a pair of arms wrap themselves around her midsection. The mirror in front of her revealed Kanoka's face over her shoulder.
You look great, Yume-chan. You're going to knock them off their shrooms.
The lame joke caused the grenade to chuckle even as she said,
You can do better than that, Kino-chan. Give me time.
The mushroom girl prodded back.
Imura-sensei is calling for everyone to take their places, and he figured you were too anxious to hear him. He's not at all wrong.
The Songyu Quirk user replied back.
I'm putting a lot of myself out on display today.
This caused her friend's smile to dim only slightly, going from cheerful to supportive.
I think that was the other thing Imura-sensei was concerned about. But don't worry, Yu-chan. We all understand and are here for you.
As the week had worn on and they continued to practice their song, Yume had perfected what memories and feelings she was going to use for this song. To sing it without projecting thoughts and feelings was outside the realm of her abilities at this point. The song they were going to sing simply stuck too close to home for her, and covered a topic that was something she cared about too much. Therefore, she had to pick images that would convey the proper meanings while keeping some of their darker images out. This required several rehearsals, as some memories were revealed that she had, which were not meant to be shown. But she finally narrowed it down and was able to run through 2 consecutive renditions without a slip on her memories. Inwardly, Kanoko thought that her friend was more amazing than she gave herself credit for. She had borne so much cruelty, and yes, it broke her, but somehow her fellow aspirant found the strength to continue on where others would have given up. And she knew her friend's reason for doing this, which she agreed with wholeheartedly. They had made sure the choir's director also knew of what transpired, and the man had said he'd make sure the message was conveyed. Finally, the time for the assembly arrived, and the choir had taken their seats together in the front 3 rows of the stage, right seating area. The principal welcomed the students to the assembly and introduced the first of 3 surprises for them that day. All Might himself came to speak about the effects of bullying and its toll on mental health. Yume and her friends had heard he was on a public speaking circuit for this very thing, but they were completely unaware the hero would be there. The hero laid it all out there for them, how bullying hurt not only the intended target, but all those that would sympathize with the target. He also explained some of the far-reaching and long-lasting effects of bullying on people's mental health, and how that could lead to the abuse striking back at not only their abusers, but the system that supported them.
We have had a recent example in the case of the Aldera school system, and we can only be thankful that the victim sought legal repercussions. There have been, to date, over 100 civil cases filed against both the system as a whole and against individual faculty members. That is to be expected, but what has not made the news is the 20 court cases brought against the families of the bullies and some of the bystanders. Those bystanders stood by and did nothing but watch, and some of them are suffering from guilt and depression because of what they did not do. Let that sink in for a moment. Doing nothing can be just as detrimental as being on either side of the bullying equation.
The audience broke out into murmurs as they processed that revelation. Many people wondered what had to have happened to cause a court case to be filed against a bystander. Yume herself knew of one of those cases. Her mother was suing Kachan's friends not only for their roles in the bullying, but also for standing by and not doing anything when she was suicide-baited. It was unclear whether or not those cases would see trial. The next guest speaker also came as a surprise for the school, and an even bigger surprise for Yume. All Might did not leave the stage when he was done. Instead, he announced the presence of a teacher from UA. The Greenette's mouth dropped open when President Mike appeared on the stage.
Papa?
She quietly whispered, but not quietly enough, as several choir members turned to look in her direction. At first, the voice hero was as loud and exuberant as ever, as he thanked the school's administration and the students themselves for allowing him to be there. But this excited demeanor didn't last too long, as he grew serious and said, I'm here to talk about the effects of prejudice and discrimination on mental health.
From there, the man gave a long speech about how harmful it was to be on either side of the line. He discussed how holding prejudices could often blind people to how their actions come across, which in turn could be mentally and emotionally devastating when finally faced with those consequences. He also talked about how both externalized and internalized prejudices could hamper the emotional growth of a person, how internalized bias could make a person hate themselves, and the consequences that often had on everyone involved. Through it all, he kept coming back to the same point.
Good mental health is vital for a healthy, well-adjusted person.
Yume wanted to hug them both. The third surprise was Tiger from the Wild Wild Pussycats. He was also on a tour similar to All Might's, but his focus was more on self-hate and depression than present might. He included examples from the transgender and aromantic communities, as well as other LGBT causes. He described cases where even in today's society, where even though these groups were accepted, there was still enough self-hate generated from a minority of people. Oh, sorry, there's a typo and it tripped me up. There was still enough self-hate generated from the minority of people that could not understand what others went through. He talked about how every person's path was different, unique, and all had to be respected not only by others, but by themselves. This struck hard in Yume, given all that she had gone through. As the transgendered pro-hero walked off stage, he looked toward Yume and gave her a wink. They most likely would be having a conversation later. In the meantime, it was the choir's turn. Who's talking? So far, we have given you much to think about. We have given you so many sad tales, so many examples of what could go wrong. So we thought that it would be most prudent to show you that even when driven into the darkest of hours, sometimes things can go right, with the right help. To show this, our choir, led by Midoriya Yume, wishes to perform a song. So let's give them a big round of applause. This was the choir's cue to get up, even as the curtain parted behind them, to show a set of 2 stands. Yume was the first in the line, as was tradition at Kame Junior High. She took a deep breath and walked as calmly and as gracefully as she could up to the stairs, to take a spot just behind and to the right of where the principal stood. The podium was slid to the side by the principal to give her more room, though the performance didn't contain any real dance moves. The rest of the choir filled in 3 rows behind her, with one on the stage and the other 2 on the stands. The director didn't actually go onto the stage, but stood in front of it on the floor to give hand signals to the choir as needed. At the same time, off to the far right of the stage, a set of musical instruments was set up with a set of drums, an electronic keyboard, and 3 guitars, one of them a bass. The band climbed up behind the choir and took their positions to give their instruments one last visual check, before nodding to their choir director, who in turn motioned for Yume to begin.
As the principal said earlier, thank you all for coming today,
Yume announced, her voice projecting through the crowd. Inside, she was trying hard to focus on her words so as to not stutter, something she found easier when performing as a girl. But this was her first time being lead in front of people, so her social anxiety was flaring. The director seemed to notice and gave her the cue to take a deep breath, which she did and let it out slowly.
I'll admit, when I first was asked to perform this song, I was very nervous and unsure I could do it justice. Because, in many ways, I am one of the people affected by the topics each of the 3 heroes talked about.
I won't go into my own situation, but I can attest to the accuracy of their speeches. But unlike too many, I was helped. Life became better for me, and I was happy with just that.
A low wave of murmuring rolled through the room, but it was silenced by the singer's next words.
However, I was reminded not that long ago that there were others out there who still live and struggle through hardships not of their own making. My eyes were open to the struggles of someone who had no way to escape their hell. That reminder gave me the strength I needed to stand here, in front of you today, with a message. It can get better. Time can heal your wounds. You can be strong.
That said, she lowered her head toward the director and nodded once. The man's eyes were moist as he started the band playing the intro music to start the performance. So the song that plays here is Stronger Than My Storm by Citizen Soldier. And unfortunately I'm not familiar with this song, so I won't be able to sing it, but we'll still say out the words. Not giving up, not giving up, not giving up. Self-hatred, I'm fighting, feels like a prison cell. As Yume started to sing the first words of the song, the entire audience saw a young boy no older than 5 walking by himself along a street. He was hunched over, gripping his bag tightly as he tried to hold back tears that did their best to escape no matter what the boy did. At the same time, they could feel a sense of old pain. Scars that ran deep, but there was no immediacy to them. It was plain that they were viewing the past, as if someone with a time-viewing quirk had targeted one of the students. Some were confused, because they couldn't connect the young boy with the girl they saw that was singing the song before them. Others were able to make their connections, mostly through the freckles. Overall, they felt a supreme sense of worthlessness and self-hate. Won't be a victim, I'm a survivor. I refuse to believe the liar in my head. The next image they saw was of a teen boy the same age as the girl in front of them, singing in front of one of their class speakers, and a group of people they didn't know. The boy seemed to be genuinely happy, or at least happier than he was in the previous version. Mixed in this vision was a sense of accomplishment and pride. The boy had obviously made a breakthrough in something, and the undertones of the feelings made people understand that he was standing in direct contradiction to the message of worthlessness that the prior vision conveyed. He had not only proved to the group that he could do something, but he also proved it to himself. The sense of worthlessness had definitely lost ground that day. My dying breath is where I was born. Now I'm stronger than my storm. There were 2 quick images that came with these lyrics. The first was the same boy alone in a bedroom, shaking with rage, grief, and self-hatred. He had in fact given up. The feelings were muted as Yume could make them, but they still poured through. They had to in order for the message to get through. She had debated with herself and others for a long time whether or not to show this, but in the end, with the help of her psychologist, she decided she needed to confront this. That led to the second image, that was brought up very quickly behind the first. The image was of the girl before them, standing amidst all her friends, having just explained what had happened in the first vision. There was some bittersweet sadness attached to this, but mostly a sense of pride and accomplishment. The feelings from this image were very complex. Some of the bitterness from the previous image remained, but it was almost as if it was used to give her the strength to accomplish whatever she had done. In the audience, Tinya's, Momo's, and Kanoko's eyes all grew misty as they recognized the second scene. They marveled at the girl on the stage, for the first time truly understanding what their friend had gone through. Each of them promised to themselves that they would help to give her the strength and protection. Shoto appeared mostly confused. He understood from the introduction that this song was dedicated to him, and was thankful she had covered his identity as much as she had. But he wasn't clear how this related to the supposed message the performer had stated earlier. For so long, I tried to pretend away my pain. This time, the audience found flashes of the boy smiling for a woman that was obviously his mother. The boy seemed to be watching her reactions most carefully, and the more she appeared to doubt his smile, the wider it would become. It was obvious to those watching that that the boy's smile was false. It never reached the eyes. And all the time, only the most observant could see the signs of resignation in the woman's eyes, even as she put on a wide smile. There was an undercurrent of shame mixed in with the growing sense of depression as the images passed by, but there was also a sense of altruism. The boy loved his mother and was doing his best to placate her worries. But in hindsight, it was obvious all he was doing was making her worry more. The proof is stitched in my scars. I'm strong enough. I'm strong enough. Again, a duo of memories played. The first was the boy being held still on the ground. 2 pairs of arms held him down while another arm was pressed to his back between his shoulder blades. The black jacket was smoking heavily, and flashes of light could be seen, but none of the faces of the boys who were holding down the green-haired boy could be seen. The feeling of pain and desperation was oddly accompanied by a sense of determination. The boy was trying his best to fight back against the assault. The other image that came right on the heels of the first was of the same boy sitting between his mother and another woman that looked familiar to many, but they couldn't quite place her. While no one else could be seen, the boy was obviously facing his tormentor. What was going on was unclear due to the sounds not accompanying any of these visions. But the feelings the audience could feel from the boy in the vision was a sense of growing strength and pride. The boy may have been shaking, but he was standing, or sitting as the case may be, up for himself, and facing his trials head on. Being broken gave me fight. A semicolon saved my life. I wear my battle scars with pride. The image of a courtroom appeared with the same boy as a witness. The audience could see the panel of judges, the prosecution and the defense, but not the audience. The man that attacked the school was sitting in the defense chair, and his lawyer was attempting to grill the boy. There was an obvious sense of indignation in the boy as he listened to the man. The boy turned to the judges and spoke to them, causing a discussion between both sets of lawyers and the panel of judges. The sense of indignation was accompanied by a growing sense of pride in himself. The boy was standing up to someone who was attempting to put him down, even though a deep sense of emotional pain was indicating this had not been a flawless battle. The sense of determination showed he was not buckling the way the defense lawyers wanted. I found myself falling so far, not giving up, not giving up. I've come to understand that tragedy is a second chance. The final images were of the young girl being dropped off at the school dates by her mother. They talked about something, and there was a bittersweet smile on her face. There was a newfound sense of determination in the girl's body language, even as the woman said something that made the teen's eyes moist. Unlike any other memory, the girl in this memory had been given a makeover, and several people in the memory held their mouths open as they viewed her. The feelings of this were a small bit of painful remembrance that seemed to fuel a sense of newfound hope, and a certain sense of freedom. Whatever had happened to the girl, she was definitely stronger than before, and she was proud of her strength. Yumi's female friends were busy dabbing their eyes as the song came to a close. They had been present for some of those events, but had only had brief descriptions of others. They looked at each other for a moment and shared a single thought. They were going to hug that girl so tightly when they next got a chance. They felt nothing but pride for the girl until they looked toward Tinya, who had seemed to figure something out. The bespectacled teen was looking across them toward their other friend with an expression of concern. They turned their attention toward the heterochromatic teen then. Todoroki Shoto was not unintelligent. In fact, his grades were right up there with his friends, who sat at the top of the class, Midoriya included. While he didn't have the sheer observational skills or deductive reasoning powers that his green-haired friend had, he could generally figure things out more quickly than most others. That it took until the final part of the song for him to understand what his friend was saying to him irked him a little, but he was inclined to overlook that. He finally understood the message. The rest of the audience would get the message that it was possible to use pain to move on and live a better life. However, for him the message was a little bit different. Shoto saw a lot of similar circumstances in those visions, including the point where his friend was held down. He knew that she was incredibly smart, and almost to the point of being gifted when it came to planning and strategy. He also knew that unless she was faced with an absolute no-win scenario, she was able to concoct plans few could beat. So he knew that each scene was carefully picked to give a second, hidden message to the right recipient, him. He was just unsure how he should feel. He knew he felt a sense of camaraderie with the girl. They both had painful experiences in seemingly inescapable hells. The message that he would be able to escape his own hell was received right alongside of the message that he was not alone. But he had had his hopes shattered so many times he didn't know if he could believe it. He knew that she believed it, and that she was doing her level best to break him free. But his bastard father was just so powerful. Even the pro-heroes said their actions could take a while. He could tell they were very careful to never give the impression that they would fail. But he was smart enough to know this was a possibility. No, a probability. That the investigations into his mother's situation was taking so long in it itself is a miracle of profound proportions. He truly expected to hear that the case was closed any day now. In the smallest, deepest places of his soul, the boy feared his father. This fear was buried deep beneath the seething rage and boiling rebellion that few people could read on his face, but seen clearly in his actions and sometimes in his words. He had sworn that he would be a hero without the use of his father's fire, and he had every intention of keeping that oath. Only, the parallels between his relationship with his Quirk and Midoriya's relationship with hers was too profound to ignore. Oh, they were quite obviously different, and if he was pushed to admit it, the green-haired teen's Quirk was potentially way more powerful. But each of them had hated the quirks housed in their bodies. Well, until recently for Yume, anyway. He was sure that no one else could have deciphered the second message right up to the point where he turned to look at his other friends. Funny. He never wanted friends, and thought he'd never make them. But Yume-chan changed that for him too. But the look in Ida's eyes as the boys looked at each other made it clear the taller boy had seen enough to make some of the same deductions. Shoto felt his cheeks warm slightly as the audience's applause started to settle, and once again his friend's voice could be heard.
Thank you very much,
the lead singer said, even as the last of the applause died down.
I just want you all to know that strength can come in many forms, and from many sources. Sometimes one can be stronger by forging their own path with the tools they were given, even if it seems like some tools are embarrassing, or bring painful memories, All you need to do is determine how to use those tools in your own way, not in the way others may dictate. Thank you.
She stepped back and the curtains came back down to obscure the choir from the audience's view. Just as Shoto thought, Midoriya was a very intelligent person and a brilliant strategist. Most of the audience would attribute that message to mean either the strength gained from survival, from their personal hells, or maybe, perhaps, taking a supposedly weak quirk and making it work for you. But again, he knew that message was for him, and he could see out of the corners of his eyes that their friends suspected this also.
Use those tools in your own way. So what would you suggest I do with this fire?
Oh, that's him thinking. Excuse me. Use those tools in your own way. So what would you suggest I do with this fire, Yume-chan? It wouldn't be until later that night that he would question why he called her Yume-chan in his head. Ooh, okay. So that was definitely a heavy chapter. Talked about a lot of stuff that I personally deal with. Again, I want to make sure that you guys do whatever is necessary for you guys to be safe and keep moving forward, but I do believe that is where we're going to go ahead and end off the episode for today. Again, I want to really apologize for not being able to post much these last couple months. I'm doing my best to get episodes out as quickly as I can, but with work being the way it is right now, I'm pretty swamped. But I'm so thankful that you guys keep coming back and hang out with me and chat with me in the comment section. It really does mean a lot to see this community grow, and it means to me that, like, you guys enjoy the content as much as I do, and it makes me happy to be able to share this with you guys. All that being said, much love to all of you. I hope you do whatever is necessary to feel safe and loved, because all of you deserve it. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and end the episode. Ciao for now.